Welcome to Better HR in 10 Minutes, where we take a question for HR and in 10 minutes, we talk about it through the point of view of a trainer and through the point of view of a labor and employment law attorney. I'm the trainer. I'm Rodney Klein. I have over 30 years experience working with the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission and as owner of my own training firm.
And I'm the employment lawyer. I'm Sarah Glasser, and I'm a shareholder at Lloyd Gosling, Rochelle & Townsend in Austin, Texas, where I head up the firm's employment law practice group. Keep in mind that anything that Rodney and I discuss today is general information and not legal advice. There is definitely no substitute for an attorney who you have hired to represent you.
Sarah, we seem to spend a lot of time on the ADA. There's probably a lot of good reasons for that. So let's just kind of keep in that vein. And let me ask you this question. What is a common mistake most employers make at the beginning of the interactive process?
Okay, so I'm going to describe a phone call that happens for me at least a couple of times a month. And my phone rings, and one of my clients will call me and say, Sarah, we just got a phone call or an email from an employee. We think they're asking for an accommodation, and here's what they want. And what they want is, it could be anything. It could be to work from home. It could be a particular type of equipment for their computer. Any of the normal accommodations that that automatically come to mind. But what has happened is the employee has come to HR with their accommodation in hand, or their accommodation request in hand. And what we are missing here, as you know, is an understanding or explanation of what the employee's limitations are that are impacting their ability to do their job, that then creates the obligation to engage in the interactive process. So there's steps in this process, and the employee, not through no fault of their own, has skipped to the end because they know what the solution is to the problem, and they may very well be right, but the process requires that we figure out what the problem is before we talk about what the solution is. And it comes up all the time for me, and I think it's just because we're so solution oriented. We want to sort of figure out what the solution is, but the problem for employers with that is that you lose the ability to have a conversation about what the problem is so that you can figure out all of your possible solutions. You're just talking about one solution, and you're not having the whole conversation. So does that come up for you, Rodney? Or do you have any strategies or tips for how to solve for that?
I don't know. I think I'm probably doing the same thing that you are and saying, well, we got to start over again. But I mean, hey, do you find the fact that once that conversation kind of got started at the end, this is the accommodation, that the employer kind of wants to stay there and they just want you to tell them either yes or no, and they don't really want to go back and have that conversation once it got started past the point of finding out what those limitations are. Is that what you run across too? Because that's what I run across.
Yeah, and it's like we get stuck on it, right? So the accommodation request is for, I don't want to say work from home because everyone gets steam coming out of their ears when we talk about that, but the accommodation request is for this specific set of headphones, and that's not possible because it doesn't work with our software. And so therefore there's nothing we can do. And it's like, no, you got to step back. What are the limitations? What do they need the headphones for? What do they want the headphones for? Are there any other solutions that we can use to solve this problem? So one of the things that I do is, oftentimes we give forms to employees and we say, fill out these forms. And one of the things that I do is I structure my forms such that the questions are very specific. What are your limitations? What accommodation suggestions do you have? In other words, what's the problem and how do you suggest that we solve this problem? And that way you break it out a little bit so that you are sort of forcing the employee or the doctor, if they're filling it out, to actually think about what the problem is as opposed to what their suggested solution is. And then you're not getting a document that says they need the headphones.
Yeah, I think one of the the fallout, things that fall out from getting the answer given to you as the employer before you go through the process, is that it makes the employer feel like they are the accommodation judges. And I know this case was about religion and not about the ADA in the Groff decision, but one of the things I found kind of interesting about that decision is the Supreme Court specifically said, hey, employers have an affirmative responsibility to accommodate. And so a lot of times employee comes back and says, I need those headphones, and the employer's like, no, can't do it. Have a nice day. Like, come back to me with another one. No, but you're not the accommodation judge. If that doesn't work, then the law says you're still obligated to try to figure out if something does. You just can't say no to stuff and walk away. You have to either go follow the interactive process till you determine that there is no accommodation, or that you find one that works.
Yeah. And that can be tough. There's a balance there, because oftentimes the employee has more information. But I do try to spend time with my clients. Like, let's brainstorm. Let's try to figure out how you might be able to solve this problem. And look, if you're the one with the IT department, you might know about all the types of headphones or how you can make the headphones work with your software. You may, in fact, have more information than the employee. So at the end of the day, it's how do we get to a solution that's going to get this employee back to work.
Right. I think we better stop there. And hopefully this was helpful. And if Sarah and I can be of any assistance to you, please let us know.